site for future use. So we're going to go ahead and start that recording now. Thanks everyone for joining us for this live demonstration of the Standards by Design tool. My name is Cassie Paulsgrove, and I have a few other colleagues here at the Department of Education that will be introducing themselves for their section of the agenda here in just a little bit. Today, we wanted to introduce a new tool and kind of give you a history and overview of how this tool came about. We want to walk a little bit of the tool through with you today, and then we also want to give you some use cases of a math use case and a career technical education use case. And then we want to talk just a little bit about integrating coursework to result in simultaneous credit. So first, just to get started, we want to talk a little bit about the importance of standards-based instruction. So as all of you on the call here know, Ohio instruction and assessment is based on our state learning standards for subject areas. So the first subject areas that we look at are academic content areas, so math, science, English, social studies, foreign languages, additional subject areas. Most of these subjects have academic learning standards that have been approved and supported by the State Board of Education that all instruction and assessment is based off of. The same is true for career technical education standards. And so one of the big reasons that this tool has been developed is because in many cases, the standards and instruction that Ohio teachers deliver every day from these various subject areas can build on and support each other. And we know that the more that content is reinforced across subject areas and reinforced a number of times with students, the better it sticks. So really this tool is meant to inspire creative instruction and to really illuminate those cross subject area alignments where you can really be working with fellow teachers in a school building to create really dynamic learning environments for students. So with that in mind, we really at the Department of Education wanted to produce a tool for teachers, which we've lovingly called Standards by Design, to help jumpstart that process for you. We understand that learning and knowing your own academic content areas and career technical education subject area, learning your own is enough, right? So being an expert on those standards is where teachers and educators can focus, and where we really thought that the state could play a role is looking across all of those to help illuminate where we see some of these alignments. So back in 2017 and 18, we brought groups of teachers together for career technical education and math and English language arts standards. And we're referring specifically to grades 7 through 12 standards. And we brought teachers together to say, hey, where do you see cross subject area alignment? Then in 18 and 19, we brought science and social studies teachers together to do the exact same thing with career technical educators. And then over the course of the 2019 and then 2020, we've really spent time developing this interactive database to showcase these alignments. So today, again, we want to show you the tool. We want to give you some use cases. We want to talk about the potential for innovation at the school level that you can use this tool to do. So first, we wanted to kind of start off with laying the groundwork of what is an alignment. And for those of you that have joined us here today, we're going to kind of go through some content quickly because we want to dig into the tool and spend most of our time there today. But if you've got questions that pop into your head, please feel empowered to use the chat function. All of us at the Department of Education here are monitoring that chat at this time, and we can answer your questions that way. Also, this is a small group, so if you feel comfortable, we'd love for you to unmute and engage in some conversations around the use of this tool, or if we said something and you're like, what did you just say? By all means, please unmute and let us know that. There's also a raise hand function on Teams here if this is your first time interacting with Teams, but we want you to feel empowered to ask questions either through the chat, through unmuting, or feel empowered to raise your hand. So kind of back, what is an alignment? So an alignment is generally a connection between a career technical competency and an academic content standard. And so these again are Ohio's learning standards, and we really want to make sure that teachers feel empowered to use any and all of them at their disposal. One of our major missions across the agency is to really not only illuminate alignments, but also enhance the way that we're talking with students about their futures post high school. So you can see how aligning career technical education standards and career fields to academic subject areas can really help drive that conversation home. So specifically, an alignment can be found across standards when content is an application, an enrichment, or a reinforcement of each other. And we're going to go through some examples of that here today, and then give you the URL to dig into the tool too. So just to give you a high-level overview of how we developed these alignments, again, we mentioned we kind of did a standard by standard analysis of English language arts, math, science, and social studies to all 16 career fields worth of career technical competencies and standards. So then we brought groups of career technical and academic teachers together to verify those connections across standards and established a uniform rating system to ensure consistency across the alignment of these standards. And we're going to talk a little bit about the structure of standards. So each content area has a different way in which they talk about standards. So for example, all 16 career technical education career field standards are organized by a strand, then an outcome, and then a competency. Math uses a different taxonomy, English uses a different taxonomy, science uses a different taxonomy, social studies uses a different taxonomy. So in order to draw a connection across these subject areas, we really looked at the most granular level of a standard in order to draw those connections across content areas. And we're going to see this in action here in just a little bit. Want to point your attention just a little bit to that consistent rating process that we used. So in order to draw these connections across subject areas, we asked both department staff and these groups of subject matter experts, teachers, in their mind, do standards apply each other? Do they enrich each other? Do they reinforce each other? And, depending on if you're the math teacher looking at a career technical standard, or if you're a career technical teacher looking at the math standard, that may be two different ratings. And we're going to show you a little bit of that here in just a little bit. But in any alignment, you can organize them by application, enrichment, or reinforcement types of alignments. So here's an example. This particular example is drawing on a construction example of how you might align a construction concept to a math concept. So we know that there's a lot of geometry in construction. You need to be able to measure and understand how shapes and space works together. So in this particular alignment example, you'll see that in a career tech construction program, for example, or in the construction career field as a job, you're going to have to do some wall framing in a lot of cases. So this is a real life skill that a student may be able to need or may need. I know I could use some wall framing skills right now, right? And drawing some connections into the math classroom about how those math standards might support a construction concept. So in this particular case, again, we're looking at geometry. So the particular math standard that aligns with the particular construction standard here is if you're in the construction classroom, you might be locating partitions, determining stud layout, and then strike wall lines. That's a standard within the career technical education standards. Now looking at the connection to math, the particular standard would be the geometry, apply geometric concepts in modeling situations. And you can see here down at the bottom of this slide what exactly that standard within math is. So again, these alignments are either application types of alignments, enrichment types of alignments, or reinforcement types of alignments. And in this case, the construction alignment is applying the math concept. So this is an application type of alignment. Another example, looking at science standards, there's a lot of science in the agriculture career field. So for careers and jobs and activities within agriculture, there's a lot of science that's there. And so if we're, for example, in an environmental science classroom, there's potentially a lot of agriculture types of concepts that you could use to bring your environmental science to life. So for an example here, we're looking at energy. Lots of energy sources can relate to Earth's resources. And so there's a basic alignment here between the science, environmental science classroom and the agriculture energy standards. And you can see that these types of alignments are reinforcement types of alignments. That's that little R down there at the bottom, that's blue. That shows you that this is a reinforcement type of an alignment. There's basically the same type of standard or the same type of activity that's going to happen in an environmental science classroom and an agriculture classroom when they're looking at these standards. So you can see here that the teachers that have been brought together to verify these alignments, the initial standard to standard rating system, there's been a lot of time and energy that's been put into generating these alignments. One disclaimer before we move into showcasing the tool with you and sharing the URL. These are really meant to generate and spark creativity at the local level. These alignments in this database is not an end-all be-all. So depending on how you as the teacher or the teachers that you work with, if you're sitting in more of a support seat, a teacher can bring alignments to life in so many different ways. And really that teacher is the subject matter expert to determine how to deploy and what projects and activities to do to bring those alignments to life. This tool is really meant to generate and spark discussion around how we might help each other out with each other's content standards for a lot of different reasons. I'm still monitoring the chat, so I don't see any questions just yet, but I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague Graham and ask that he introduce himself. And we're going to show you how to get to the Standards by Design tool, and then just a few of the logistics around that. And then we're going to get into some use cases. What does this look like from a career tech teacher standpoint? What does this look like from an academic teacher standpoint? Graham?
Yeah, thank you, Cassie. I appreciate your walking through all that information, and my goal is to hopefully give folks an idea of how the tool actually works. So yeah, my name is Graham Wood. I am the Graduation Requirements Program Administrator at the Ohio Department of Education. And in a previous role, I helped manage the development of this tool. So when we actually had our IT team working on, building this out. So I'm really excited that this is coming out into the world and that we're having an opportunity to share this with you today. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen, and I cannot see. I can see Cassie. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen right now? Okay, perfect. So this is the homepage, but I also wanted to show you how we can actually get here. So I'm going to go ahead and Google search, and you can do this pretty easily. You can Google search Standards by Design. And you'll see that the first thing that pops up is our website, the Ohio Department of Education. So that works really well. You can also go to the homepage of the Ohio Department of Education, and this search function, and I share this whenever I'm talking about our website. This search function works really well for a lot of things. So if there's ever anything that you're trying to find on our website and you can't find it really easily, try and search it. That usually helps. But I'm going to go ahead and search Standards by Design, and it'll show up here as well. So we have our landing page for Standards by Design that talks a little bit about the tool, and then it actually comes in here. And we discovered a little bug earlier today where this isn't actually taking us where we'd hope it would. But you can go ahead and start a search here. So I would like to search construction and math. So let's go ahead and try that out. And I can search this, but what it's going to do is take me back to this alignment search page. So my goal as we're going through this is what Cassie showed you were actually screenshots from the Standards by Design tool, those examples of alignments. And I'm going to show you how to get there. I'm going to show you how you might use the tool to get to that point, and also hopefully show you some bells and whistles along the way. But my hope would be, and I know Cassie mentioned this earlier, if there's something that you see on the screen that I don't click on that you want to see how it works, go ahead and unmute and say, hey, Graham, can we do this? Can you explore that? That's, a great thing. And I hope, if there's something that pops up in the chat that Cassie would interrupt. The other piece that I'm going to say is that, me walking through the tool can be helpful to you. But what's going to be 10 times more helpful is you getting in and playing around and exploring yourself. So, take this with a grain of salt. You can figure out where the buttons might take you. But I also highly suggest getting in the tool and playing around and exploring and figuring out what works best for you. So the first thing that I'm going to look for is that first standard that Cassie talked about, where it was an alignment between construction and geometry. So I knew that was in construction, and you'll notice that these searches here kind of waterfall down with the hierarchy of the standards. So you have career tech on the left side and whatever academic subject you're choosing on the right. So I know I want to do structural construction, and this is where I would see wall framing. Please note that as I click on this, more comes up, and this is the most specific level of career tech. This is, just construction 3, strand 3, which is structural construction, 5, which is wall framing, and then all the different competencies that fall within that. I'm just going to go ahead and search for all of these all of these competencies within that outcome. Then I'm going to go ahead and go to math, and I'm going to go to geometry. But I do want to show you, I'm just going to search for math here. But what happens if I select science is that we get a whole nother set here of standards. So I could search in chemistry, interactions of matter, and select some standards there if I wanted to. I am not going to do that today. I'm going to remove all of those. I'm just going to search in geometry. So I've selected construction, wall framing, and math geometry. Let's go ahead and search and see what comes up. So we've got 8 alignments here, and it looks like all of those alignments are spread out between these 4 competencies: 3, 5, 10, 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, 4, and 3, 5, 6. I'm going to generate a report that includes all 4 of those competencies in it. So you'll see that my search parameters are still showing up here. It did pull in science because I had selected that, but there weren't any alignments there. So we've got construction technologies, and you can waterfall this down, or you can simplify it there as well using these buttons here. So I'm going to go ahead and generate this report. And what you'll see is that it shows exactly what you saw with Cassie. You've got your construction, the actual competency here. You've got all the details of that construction from strand, outcome to competency. You've also got your math, domain, grade, and then your standards here. And you can go ahead and look through these. If you want to simplify what shows up here, you can do that. You'll find up here there's a little key of the different ratings. If you ever forget, what A stands for, what E stands for, or what R stands for, this will show up always in the top right corner. And you'll notice here that you have the option to go back, or you have the option to download. So I'm going to show you what happens when you download. And this might take a second. It's going to spin for a moment here. But you'll notice that what showed up here was this report. And I can save that as a PDF to my computer. I can print it immediately, but it has that same setup and shows, as you can see, all of these different, the key up here for your different types of alignment. And it's got all of that information included in a handy PDF. So that is possible there. And that's how we would get to this math alignment. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back. I'm actually going to click Update Search. And what this is going to do is it's going to take me back to my search page, but it's going to maintain all of the parameters that I've already selected. So you can, I can go ahead and search again. And if I hit Update Search, it's not going to clear any of that out. But the nice thing is that instead of having to X out of everything, I can just go ahead and clear it out myself right here. So I want to change up the search that I'm doing, and we're going to try and find that science and environmental or agriculture standard that we saw before. So I'm going to select science, and I'm going to go ahead and select environmental science as a whole course there. But then I'm going to go over here and go to agriculture and environmental systems. I am going to select environmental science here, and we're just going to go ahead and search this. So let's pretend right now that I am actually a science teacher. I'm not an agriculture teacher. So it's really not going to help me to know all the details of what we're getting into here. I don't really know what these are. I don't know what's included in these different outcomes. And there's a lot of different alignments here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this button. This button says toggle alignments, and you'll see that it has arrows going from different directions. And the reason that we included this is for 2 reasons. One, you'll have, science teachers or math teachers or English teachers that will prefer to dial down with the standards that they know and that they're aware of. But it also helps because now when I'm looking at these alignments, the ratings on them are going to be from a different perspective. As Cassie mentioned, one alignment might have two different ratings from two different directions. So now I've switched and I can see this from the perspective of a science teacher. And now I can think about what that career technical competency is going to do if I bring it into my classroom. That's the rating that we're looking at here. So as we think about this, I want to get more into Earth's resources, and I'm going to go ahead and generate a report here. And you'll find that now, instead of the career tech competencies being on the top and then seeing the academic standard down here, it's the opposite. We see the academic standard here, and we've got our academic standard there, and we're finding out what different career tech competencies align to this standard. So we've got quite a bit of information here, a lot aligning to water and water pollution. But I believe that the one that was specifically with Cassie was around resources. So we're going to go ahead and scroll down until we can find that one. And you can see there were a lot of alignments. When I saw that number, it said 63, and I figured, wow, this is going to be a very, very large report. But it's nice to have all of this information. Looks like I'm having trouble finding that exact alignment that Cassie showed earlier, but this is an example of how you can get to that. So I'm going to go ahead and go back, and I'm going to slim this down a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and go to, let's specifically go to contaminants and pollution control, and let's generate a report here. So I can download this, but there's another function that I want to show everybody as well, which is the login function. So you can go ahead and use this without having a safe account, and download reports. But another tool that we included here is the ability to log in. And you can log in using your safe account, and you'll be able to access the Standards by Design tool from behind the wall of being logged in. And you'll notice that the only thing that changes here is that you've got these saved documents. So I'm going to go ahead and do that exact same search. I'm going to toggle that back. I'm going to go to Earth's resources. I'm going to generate a report. So I've got this here, and you'll notice that I have the option now to save this to my profile. And I can go ahead and do that, and I'm going to say SBD, Standards by Design, test webinar. I'm going to save that to my profile. And notice that it says 2 right now. And now we've got this third document here. And if I go over here, you'll see that there's a test from different dates. And this, test webinar is here. I can download it. I can delete it. We have the opportunity to do, any of those things there. But these files here are saved so that if I don't want to print it, I don't want to download it, I can still have it behind my Standards by Design account. So this is the tool. There's a whole nother search opportunity that we have that's called course search that we're not going to get into today. We're going to specifically focus on the alignment search, but I'm going to go ahead and stop talking for a moment and see if anybody has any questions or anything that they'd like to explore in our tool.
And everyone can just, again, feel free to unmute, or if you're more comfortable with the chat function, there is a chat function you can use.
Cassie, this is Harold Niehaus.
Hi, Harold.
How are you? Hey, I'm looking at this, and I was coming to this to see if there was part of this functionality being where we can search for careers in general and career instruction. I know that I went through a lot of the model curricula page by page trying to align the topic of careers, the work that I do. so that when I reach out to teachers, I can say, this is supported by the model curricula.
Yeah, that's a great point. So the model curricula is rooted in these particular standards. So this alignment is a little more granular than the model curricula. But one thing I would suggest, and I'm going to ask Graham to navigate this while I'm saying it, is let's say you want to work with your math teachers in your schools, or let's say you're working with a curriculum director at the districts in which you serve, which Harold's at an educational service center for those of you that may not know. So let's say you've got 6 districts and you want to work with the curriculum directors. You can generally give a report on how many alignments from academic subject areas to career technical areas exist. So Graham, go to the academic subject drop down for me. So Harold, like if I'm you, the way I'd use this tool is I'd highlight all 4 of those subject areas to just say, like, if we're talking about trying to illuminate careers in traditional academic classrooms, let me just look at these. And Graham, I don't even think you need to go that far yet, but go ahead.
I got overexcited, sorry.
Got it. No, you're fine. You're fine. So then Harold, what I would say is, like, let's say I know in Western Ohio, manufacturing's huge. So we're going to check out the manufacturing career field. So Graham, if you go to the career field drop down, you can look and say, I'm going to focus with these curriculum directors on engineering and manufacturing. So now if you just hit search, you've got all 4 of these open, and you just want one career field. It's going to take a minute because there's going to be a bunch of these things. Harold, you could easily then say, look at this alignment. There are, over 4,000 alignments between English language arts and engineering and manufacturing that we could explore, curriculum directors. There are over 140 alignments in math standards. Let's say trickle down effect, you can see. So I think maybe, for your sake, looking at the high level number of alignments between academic subject areas and career fields that you want to focus on, because, focusing on 16 career fields right off the bat sometimes is a bit overwhelming. That might be a good strategy. Does that help at all?
Yes, I think so. It's a little different take than where I was headed. Like I say, I reviewed those model curricula and tried to pull out like ELA standards so that support resume writing, which would be a career competency, trying to get kids to be able to have a good resume. But I just didn't know if I missed any of those as I reviewed those model curricula. And I thought, well, maybe this tool would help me do that.
One other approach to think about then, if you just want to pull out, generally where resume writing type of skills would align, in the career technical education career field, there's this business operations strand, and every career field has this, which means that every academic subject area is aligned to these business operations skills. So we could focus on those, what we call strand 1 competency alignments to the academic subject areas with you at some point if we wanted to play with that.
Okay, that sounds good. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking the question. Anyone else have a thought or a question like that about how it might apply to the roles that you serve? It looks like there's a question in the chat. I'm amazed at the functionality of the tool. Thank you. That's great. And want to know more about how you created this online. So we did all of the alignments offline and used like a series of Excel spreadsheets to house alignments for content management. And then luckily the Department of Education was the recipient of a grant in which this type of alignment was a priority. So we contracted with an IT developer to build this particular tool. So the department, invested in the development of this tool to house those alignments that we created offline. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah,
If-
and
okay.
one other thing that I wanted to share is that these alignments are not stagnant. Obviously our standards change, our career tech competencies are being updated every single year. So these are alignments that we plan to and will be updating. So along those lines, if you find something in here, there are bound to be places where you either, see something that you don't necessarily think aligns, or you find something that, isn't aligned that you really think should be. Feel free to let us know. I believe there's a contact email for Chris, who you're going to hear from in a couple minutes. Feel free to let us know, and we can make edits to those documents. And, based on, you might have seen up here, I have that admin tab. If I wanted to update these files and update the data behind this, it's really great. We can do that whenever we'd like to. So please just, let us know. But the great thing about it is that work was done, but it's not finished, and I don't think it'll ever be finished. The work of determining what these alignments are.
Yes, I have a question. This is Ron Sismondo from Jefferson County ESC.
Hi, Ron.
If you cleared the career fields and the academic subjects, and with the gentleman that just asked that question before about resume writing, could you just put that in the keywords, and what would come up?
So you'd need to select a career field and an academic subject. I can go ahead and do that and see what happens.
Sometimes what pops out is as much of a surprise to us as it is to you all too.
The keyword search tool is one that's a little less scientific. It can be helpful if you're looking for something specific like this. But what exactly, what's going to happen is yeah, sometimes a surprise. It also takes quite a bit longer because it is searching, word by word through everything. It doesn't slim it down. I can go ahead, actually, just to hopefully make this take a little, make it go a little bit faster. I'll go ahead and see if I can, slim it down a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and just use resume, and I'm gonna, go in one or two career fields, and then because it's resume writing, I'm gonna go ahead and select English language arts. This might make things move a little bit faster. So yeah, nothing showing up there. I'll update that, and I'll go ahead and select all career fields and see if anything happens. But yeah, it looks like that's, not showing up with anything. That may be that literally the word resume doesn't show up in our career tech strand 1 standards, or that, that resume writing wasn't aligned at that point.
Okay, I was just wondering if maybe it was in the employability area or not.
Yeah, I was hoping that it would be, and I thought maybe that it would be, but it looks like that's a no.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, Graham, I know the word may not specifically exist in career tech, but I mean the skill does. But yeah, just refining your search terms down to make sure you're picking up, what you're looking for. Yeah, I think you're right in that I don't think career tech uses the word resume, but yeah, that's probably it. But yeah.
And a lot of times, and this kind of goes back to some theory around standards writing in general. But often a very specific skill like writing a resume will be couched under, something like creating employment documents, so that the standard is more about generally creating employment documents than it is about writing a particular resume. So sometimes you'll see a little more broad language in an actual standard versus that very specific skill. Yep, right there.
I'm also seeing here that it probably was because it is resume with the accents there, that's how it's showing up. But here we know that self-promotion shows up. So let's go ahead and give this a try. So you'll see that there is alignment here. So let's go ahead and generate this report and see what it is. 8th grade writing, produce clear and coherent writing in which the development, organization, and style are appropriate to task, purpose, and audience. Right there. Same standard in, 9th and 10th grade or 11th and 12th grade. So there is, direct application there of that idea of resume writing. We just had to be a little more creative because that search tool is, doesn't account for those accent marks.
Something that I think those of you that work across subject areas will appreciate is, digging into this tool and thinking about its application in the classroom allows for you to see the difference in the standard writing across subject areas. So, where career technical education uses specific competency action type of standards, you just saw there the example of English language arts, for example, has the same exact verbiage for an 8th grade standard versus a 9th and 10th grade standard and 11th through 12th grade standard. So it's very interesting to see the differences across subject areas and in the way in which they've written standards. But to Harold's earlier point, especially in those academic subject areas, that's where the model curricula really comes into play, to really get that state-supported vision of how those standards apply in the classroom.
So we'll hopefully have a little bit more time for questions later, but I wanted to toss it over to our math consultant who is with us, Annie Canalongo. And Annie is going to go ahead and run through an example of how a math teacher might use this tool. Annie?
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm pretty excited about this tool. We've been working on it for several years. And the reason I'm so excited about it is because as a math teacher, I was always asked, when are we ever going to use this, right? And myself, like many math teachers, we went to school and we became a math teacher. So our experiences are not in the career fields unless we waited tables or did some college job. My experience, I went to school, I did some part-time jobs along the way to kind of put myself through school, and then I was an educator. And so I know math can be used for all these different fields, but I don't really have a good solid knowledge of what these fields are. And so so I'm just going to kind of take you through this as what I would as a math teacher. So if I'm a math teacher, I'd kind of go over here, I'd select math. The one thing about this tool you have to understand is you have to select something in both columns. And so I have to select all over here. And the reason I'm selecting all is because I don't know where math is used. I know it's used in lots of places. So I think I just want to do a very broad search. The one thing I do know, though, is I'm an Algebra 1 teacher, and I'm about to do a statistics unit. And so statistics especially, it'd be nice to have some real live context for statistics. So I'll kind of scroll down here and I'll get my statistics. And if I'm an Algebra 1 teacher, I know, math teacher, I know my standards pretty well. So I know the SID standards are the ones that I would be using in Algebra 1 for the most part. And I'm just going to do a search to kind of see what comes up. What could I build a unit about around math? And so I kind of look here, okay, here's some statistics that come up. It comes up in all the fields, but it seems to be really heavy, a nice alignment between statistics and business. So that's kind of interesting. I can use this little drop down box here and kind of see some even greater alignments. So let's dig in. Okay, marketing, there's 22 alignments here with marketing. Marketing sounds interesting to me, might be interesting to some of my students. Some of this other stuff, I don't know what those words mean, so maybe I'll skip those. But marketing kind of sounds fun. So let's pull this down. And then I can kind of even go further down. But as I kind of toggle down further, I'm like, well, I don't really know the difference between market planning and market informational management. Market research kind of sounds like statistics, but I don't really know. So I'm just going to do a broad search and kind of see what comes up here in marketing in general, thinking that maybe I could do this whole theme in statistics and marketing. So when I do this, I can look here and say, okay, this part, so you can see up here, here's the competency standard here. And that is what I would be unfamiliar with as a math teacher, so that's helpful to have it there. And then I can also see that it falls under marketing research, and again, it's right here as well. So, okay, interpreting quantitative patterns. Well, that sounds very statisticky. I like to do quantitative patterns. Qualitative research isn't quite quantitative, but the quantitative patterns, I kind of like that. Oh, using statistical methods. Oh, that seems like a very good, match there. And so I can see, okay, it hits SID 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's usually my first unit there. So that could be a good match there. And then it hits all these other ones too. Maybe that's unit 2. Maybe I bring this competency into a couple standards. Then I go down here, track business information to stay abreast of trends and changes. This is all about the scatter plots. The one thing we found when we were going through this, Graham and I did the other day, is this first sentence is a cluster. And so it's in our standards, it's a teal. Here it's not teal, but it's kind of there. And then sometimes our standards have A's, B's, and C's, and they're not quite broken out here yet. I know that they're still working to change some of that formatting stuff, so it may not be exactly how it is in the math standards, but at least gives you a pretty good idea. Math teachers know the standards that they have, so they can kind of see this. So this is more scatter plot. So maybe when I'm tracking business information, I can kind of bring this into my scatter plot section over here. Forecasting sales and establishing goals. And so I can kind of go down there and say, okay, which ones of these, if I do a marketing thematic unit, can I hit all my statistics standards? It looks like I might be able to. Can I hit most of them? So, and if I'm a very creative teacher, I may say, okay, this will hit a lot of statistics standards, but what happens if I want to do this marketing unit and I want to bring some other types of standards in there as well? Maybe some function standards, maybe some algebraic standards. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to update my search from the beginning. And now I know from this side that I want to do business because I know what the marketing's down there, right? So let's see. And then I can go down marketing. I don't want to go further than that because I don't really remember how far down the marketing went. I just knew there were a lot of marketing things. Now instead of statistics, maybe I want to see what kind of functions standards I can have. I know my algebra, my function standards are kind of related. There's not really geometry in algebra 1, but there is a number and quantity. It's always nice to bring those NQ standards in. And now I'm going to search. Okay, look, now I can see marketing still has 42 alignments with the algebraic standards. It seems this pricing part seems to have a pretty big hit here. So I can look at this here and I can say, okay, determine the product's cost. And now I can see, and this is almost even a little bit easier to see now that I kind of narrow it down, what these competencies are from like kind of a high level. So pricing determines product's cost. Okay, I'm envisioning some graphs here, break even points, systems of equations, markup, that's like a percentage, right? Adjusting price to maximize profitability. That might be a little bit more calculus based depending on how we do it, but maybe we can bring it down to an algebra 1 level. I can at least talk maybe about domain and range versus seasonal and situational. So, and then I can kind of, so I can see all of these if I want to see them. I'm going to do this and I'm going to go backwards for a second. So I can say, okay, NQ1 is there, AREI4, so I can bring the solving equations and equations in one variable. And like just like Graham said too, this isn't the end-all be-all tool. It's a tool to get you start thinking about how standards could align and how standards could match up. And so if there's another standard you think about and you're like, oh, wait a second, I think I can pull this one in too, go for it. And like and Graham said, email him or email Cassie and say, we found another alignment that we think is great. So you can kind of go in this direction as well. Or if you want to toggle over here and say, okay, what do we have here going on? So algebra, can I do down? Now I can kind of see the domain. I don't think you can go all the way down to the standards here, but at least you can see the domain here. And you can say, okay, creating expressions, seeing structures and expressions. Let's see what's going on with functions here. So my IF, BF, so this part maybe may not be quite as helpful as the other, but I can say that see that this, where is this one, the 21 here? There seems to be 20 function standards, so that's kind of helpful. Let's toggle down. 15 of them seem to be interpreting functions. So maybe I just give my kids graphs to different business situations and I have them interpret functions, where the rise of the parabola could be, or probably way more exponential instead of parabolas for the finance. But you can do that in all sorts of different ways. The idea is to be creative and to use this as a starting point. So what if I were you and I were an ESC and I were bringing, since most of you seem to be ESC people, I'd bring your teachers in maybe by subject area and say, okay, here are the alignments. Now let's brainstorm. How can we put a unit together with this? And then maybe do a broad scope and say, okay, here are some real world things. Maybe let's go talk to somebody from the field that is into marketing, and maybe they can tell us how they use math every day. And then we can create some lessons or something like that around it. And that would be fantastic. And if you make up lessons like that, send them to us at the math department, and maybe we could use them somewhere down the line. Like I said, math teachers are always looking for real life applications. Unfortunately, many of us just do not have the skill set to know how to find them. So if you can somehow create those, I think a lot of people would be excited about that. And so I'm gonna leave my time and I'm gonna introduce Chris, who's gonna take you through the career tech side.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Vigneron. I am the Education Program Specialist in the Office of Career Technical Education. I work with arts and communication programs and information technology programs. I've been working on this team with the Standards by Design project here for a while, and I'm excited that it's finally rolling out here. I'm excited to share with you some of the cool things we can do with this. So I'm going to share my screen for you here, and where am I? There. So we're going to. I'm going to start here on the Department of Education homepage, as Graham explained to us, it's pretty easy to just pop things in the search bar here. That's generally what I do. And it'll get us where we want to go here. So again, there's a number of really interesting things that you can do with this, but one kind of real world application that I think could be useful for you as administrators trying to introduce this to your teachers is I think you know, a great buzzword in education, right, is like collaboration, right? We want people to collaborate together, and that's just kind of a hard thing to do, right? It's hard to direct people on what that means and how to do it. And you know, sometimes you end up with a lot of frustrated teachers who just kind of sit back and say, well, this is a waste of a day, right? And I think this kind of I think this tool is a good way of kind of putting in concrete what that means to collaborate and where we can do some of these collaborations. So let's take a look here at what we got. So let's say I'm setting up a professional development with this, and I'm going to ask some of my teachers to collaborate together. I paired my IT instructor with a history instructor. They have the way the schedule works out. Say the junior IT program runs in the morning, and then all the same students end up taking American history in the afternoon. So all the students are together, and so they're all working on projects together. And this is a way for us to say, well, they're doing these two different classes, and they're doing all of these projects for these two different courses. What kind of ways can we tie these things up and see if we can enrich this a bit? So let's do here. Let's take a look at a course search here, and we'll say I'm going to look in my career field. I'm in an IT career field, and then I'm going to select my pathway. This IT teacher we'll say is a programming teacher, and the courses that they teach in their programming pathway, the teacher of course is going to know all this, right? They'll be able to tell you they got. Let's see, they're going to do the IT programming, visual programming, and web design are their 4 courses, right? And we're going to talk to our history teacher over here, and the history teacher, the social studies history, you know, however you like it, they're teaching the American history class right after, right? So we're going to take a look and see what kinds of alignments exist between these two courses and programs here. So it looks like we've got a few different alignments that have showed up for us here. We're going to look in this information technology course is what we're going to look at. So this is the information technology course is kind of the intro course in IT career fields. A number of our IT programs start with this as one of their introductory courses. So this one's there's a number of programs that are teaching that particular course, and of course, you know, a lot of schools are teaching American history as well. So we're going to pull this down here, and we're going to see which kind of alignments we have setting up with this, and we're going to generate our report here. So yeah, we got a couple of we got a handful of alignments here. We've got five or six, and then listed down here are the other competencies that are entailed in this IT course and the standards in the American history course. But these are the ones that don't align. So these are the areas where we've got connection here. So it kind of teases all of that out for us, so we can see where they line up here. And it looks like what we have here is some things that have to do with security laws, like internet security laws, labor relations, and some stuff like that. Problem solving, critical thinking skills. But yeah, I'm thinking in particular here about IT competency 114. Describe the role and function of professional organizations, industry associations, and organized labor, and use networking techniques to develop and maintain professional relationships. All right, so as a student who's looking to become a professional in IT, what does the industry look like? You know, like how did we get here as you know, in terms of what are the laws that are in place that have made the labor market look the way it does, or why hiring practices are the way they are, or anything like that. If I'm trying to get a job here, these are all really important and civic ideas that we should know, not just as a student, a kid who wants to get a job in IT, but as a human being, a citizen of the United States who has a job in IT, right? So this lets us illustrate a lot of these things a lot better, right? Let's see, there's a couple of them down here, and this one here stuck out to me, American History 17. An improved standard of living for many, combined with technological innovations in communication, transportation, and industry, resulted in social and cultural changes and tensions. This is in 20th century American history, I believe, right? So the discussing 20th century American history and technological history of that century is terribly relevant to information technology and how computers kind of came to dominate our daily lives and everything. So again, your IT teacher and your history teacher might sit down next to each other and say, we got to do this PD here, and it's boring and whatever, but it's kind of hard to get that conversation started for them, right? And this is going to let them sit down and say, here are the things that we can talk about, right? And while the history teacher is, they're perfectly well versed in all of their standards here, and the IT teacher is perfectly well versed in their standards, they're speaking different languages, right? So this is a way to let us see where those languages meet up and be able to have conversations in a language that we all understand, right? So yeah, I hope that one looks fairly useful to you. Again, this is just one example, but I think it's really a good way to show how this tool really works here. So yeah, I will kick it back. I think I'm going to kick it back to Cassie, right? So thanks again for showing up here with us today. And again, my name is Chris Vigneron, and I'm sure my contact information is around here somewhere. I can get it to you. If you have any questions about any of this or anything, feel free to reach out to me. Or any of the other of us in this team as well. I think we're all pretty well happy to help and collaborate and support in any way we can.
So we kind of want to wrap up today's session with some applications of how and why these alignments are important. And in one particular initiative or opportunity to use these standards alignments is through integrating coursework to result in students earning multiple credits for one course, so simultaneous credit. So we wanted to draw your attention to the fact that state law does allow for districts and schools and community schools and chartered non-publics to integrate content standards from multiple subject areas into a single course for which students can earn multiple credits. So, what does that look like? So, for example, and we're going to use just an academic to academic subject areas example real quick. For example, if you had social studies and you had English, and you did a thorough standards review to see where, let's say English 9 and World History 1 align, and you can see that by just tweaking this particular English project and adding this particular social studies project, you can really have all standards addressed in one course, then students can earn multiple credits within that one course. And so oftentimes you'll see this operationalized as like a humanities course in this particular example. And, for thinking about the application across career fields, the same can happen with a career technical education course and an academic course. So many of you may have agriculture programs that you're working with. That seems to be a popular program across, traditional schools. There's a lot of alignment between the science standards and the agriculture standards. So, doing that standards alignment review with agriculture courses could result in a student earning a science credit and the agriculture credit in a particular example. Those examples could be endless, depending on the skill set of the teachers that you're working with, depending on the project-based orientation of how you operationalize these alignments back at your local school district. But again, the point of this tool is to generate creativity so that we're designing projects and courses that are very relevant to our students, that are exposing them to multiple career fields and in what options they have for their life post high school, and really generating that discussion across subject areas so that we can begin to really help each other reinforce content across these areas so that students are seeing that real life application to what they're learning. So we hope that you enjoyed today's live demo. We want to spend just the last 5 minutes on any questions that you may have. So I'm going to go ahead and end the recording for us here and then open it up to my colleagues and to anyone on the call here today to just start asking some questions.